explore mythology through academic scholarship. We analyze primary sources, archaeology, and scholarly interpretations. No romantic fiction, just rigorous historical and literary analysis. Subscribe now for academic deep dives into myths from every culture that shaped human civilization.
Genealogy and divine status of Prometheus. In the poems of Hesiod, Prometheus first appears as a figure integrated into the genealogy of the Titans. In the Theogony, the poet lists the children of the Titaness Clymene or Asia and the Titan Iapetus, Menoetius, Atlas, Prometheus, and Epimetheus. Prometheus is thus born among the Titans, but he distinguishes himself from his brothers not so much by strength or violence, but by cunning, metis, and foreseeing intelligence. His name, in fact, is linked by ancient tradition to the idea of thinking before, Prometheus, the foreseer, in contrast to his brother Epimetheus, whose name indicates the one who thinks after, belatedly, when things are already done. Hesiod presents Prometheus as a particular antagonist of Zeus, not an armed rebel, nor a warrior who confronts the sovereign of the gods with brute force, but a god who attempts to deceive, challenge, and trouble the new lord of the cosmos through cunning, ritual deception, and theft. However, Prometheus, despite being a Titan, is not placed among the defeated enemies in the Titanomachy, whom Zeus confines to Tartarus. His opposition is played out on the level of sacrifice, fire, and the relationship with mortals. Prometheus in Hesiod's Theogony. The sacrifice at Mecone, the original deception. Hesiod recounts in the Theogony that at the beginning of the new divine order led by Zeus, the gods and mortals gathered to establish the modalities of sacrifice, that is, the manner in which the flesh of the animals offered to the gods should be divided between men and gods. The location of the episode is Mecone, identified by tradition with Sicyon, or an ancient sacred site. And there, Prometheus, of crooked counsel, prepares a deception aimed at Zeus himself. Prometheus takes a great ox and cuts it into pieces, dividing the parts of the animal into two separate piles. In one, he places the choice meat and the entrails, but hides them inside the animal's belly, covering them with skin. In the other, he takes the white bones, arranges them elaborately, and covers them with a shiny, tempting layer of fat. Thus, he prepares a dual sacrificial dish, which must be submitted to Zeus's choice. The supreme god, by choosing one of the two portions, will forever determine the distribution of the sacrifice between gods and men. Hesiod narrates that Prometheus shows the two portions to Zeus with apparent loyalty, but in reality with the intent to deceive him. Zeus, who sees the pile covered with splendid fat and the well-arranged bones, understands the deception. Hesiod insists that Zeus is not actually misled, but allows the deception to occur to have a pretext for punishment later. Nevertheless, Zeus deliberately chooses the portion with the more appealing appearance, the one made of bones covered with fat, thus abandoning the better part of the meat to future generations of men. This episode has a mythic function of foundation. It explains why in sacrifices men burn the bones and fat on the altars for the gods, while keeping the edible meat for themselves. Hesiod presents the scene with solemn tones, highlighting the contrast between Prometheus's cunning and Zeus's awareness. When Zeus realizes, or rather feigns indignation at the deception, he becomes angry with Prometheus and prepares a punishment that will profoundly mark the human condition. The deprivation of fire and the Promethean theft. After the deception of the sacrifice, Hesiod recounts that Zeus decides on a first revenge. He deprives mortals of fire. As a consequence of Prometheus's act, men who previously benefited from fire are now deprived of it. This makes their lives harder and prevents the cooking of food, the working of metal, and the other arts that depend on fire. At this point, Prometheus intervenes once again. Unable to bear seeing men deprived of an essential element, he steals fire from the gods. Hesiod describes the act with a concrete detail. Prometheus hides the fire in a narthex, a plant, the giant fennel stalk, whose pith can retain a live ember. In this way, the Titan secretly takes the fire from Zeus's divine dwelling and brings it back to men. Zeus also sees this act. In Hesiod, it is clear that the supreme god observes and understands Prometheus's actions, and the theft of fire constitutes a new offense that demands a greater and lasting punishment, not only against Prometheus himself, but against the entire human race that benefited from his gesture.
Punishment of Prometheus and men in Hesiod. The creation of Pandora, the beautiful evil for men. In the Works and Days, Hesiod returns to the theme of the theft of fire and Zeus's response, shifting the focus from the Titan's punishment to that of humanity. Zeus decides that since men received fire through Prometheus's deception, they must in turn receive a deceptive gift, a woman, beautiful, but a bearer of evil. Zeus orders Hephaestus, the smith god, to mold the first woman from earth. Hephaestus models her in the image of a splendid maiden. Athena teaches her feminine crafts, such as weaving, and adorns her with a veil and splendid clothes. Aphrodite pours the charm of loving desire and seduction upon her head. The Graces and Pytho, persuasion, give her necklaces and ornaments. Hermes bestows upon her a deceitful mind and lying words, sweet to the ear, but insidious. Hesiod insists on listing the gods who contribute to this creation, indicating that all participate in this gift destined for men. The result is a figure that Hesiod defines as a kalon kakon, a beautiful evil. Beautiful in appearance, but the origin of suffering and misfortune. Zeus calls her Pandora because all the gods gave her a gift. Hesiod then recounts that Pandora is led to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother. Prometheus had warned Epimetheus never to accept gifts from Zeus, aware of his stratagems. But Epimetheus, who thinks after, forgets his brother's advice and welcomes Pandora. Hesiod associates Pandora with a container, in a later era interpreted as a pithos or jar. With her presence among men, it releases the evils that previously did not circulate on earth. Diseases, toils, sorrows, old age, all forms of human suffering. Only Elpis, hope or expectation, remains in the jar, having not escaped with the other evils. Hesiod does not fully clarify whether this is a good thing or a further deception. But by linking the narrative to Prometheus, the author emphasizes that human condition from now on will be irremediably marked by evil. This is Zeus's response to the theft of fire. He does not retroactively remove fire from men, but adds to their condition suffering and a new form of dependence linked to marriage, descent, and the inevitable connection between generation and toil. The personal punishment of Prometheus in Hesiod. In the Theogony, Hesiod also mentions the direct punishment inflicted on Prometheus by Zeus. The poet recounts that Zeus, angered by the deception of the sacrifice and the theft of fire, orders Prometheus to be chained. Two dimensions intertwine. On one side, the cosmic punishment towards men, on the other, the exemplary punishment of the Titan. Hesiod says that Zeus, with firm bonds, chains Prometheus, binding him with unbreakable chains. Furthermore, he sends an eagle against him, a bird sacred to the sovereign of the gods, which devours his liver every day. The liver, an organ that in ancient imagination was often the seat of passions and life itself, regrows every night so that the torture repeats endlessly, a perpetual torment that knows no end or relief. Hesiod, unlike Aeschylus, does not dwell on long speeches or dialogues about Prometheus's psychological condition. He presents the punishment as a measured and inevitable consequence of the Titan's action, and merely emphasizes the harshness of Zeus's revenge. Prometheus remains bound by a painful bond until, according to the tradition Hesiod only hints at, a future hero, Heracles, son of Zeus, will free him with the consent of Zeus himself, a detail that shows that the sovereign of the gods, despite inflicting a terrible penalty, retains the power to end the torment when he deems it appropriate.
Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, a drama of punishment. With Aeschylus, in the tragic drama Prometheus Bound, the figure of the Titan is greatly expanded, internalized, and staged. While Hesiod recounted the events in the third person with an omniscient narrator and a didactic tone, Aeschylus brings Prometheus to the stage, gives him a voice, and makes his suffering dialogue with various divine and mythical characters. The scene is unique, a deserted and remote place at the extreme confines of the world, where Zeus's power is exercised in the brute form of coercion.
Prologue: Dragging and Chaining. The tragedy opens with the arrival of Hephaestus, the smith god, accompanied by Kratos, power, and Bia, force, personifications of Zeus's coercive forces. Kratos commands, speaks harshly, embodying the ruthlessness of the divine order. Bia remains mute, but acts alongside Kratos to compel Hephaestus to perform his task. Hephaestus is reluctant. He suffers from having to chain a god of his own lineage, a Titan, and would like to avoid the task. But Kratos reminds him that he must obey Zeus without pity. The chaining scene is described in detail. Prometheus is fixed with bronze fetters on the rocks of a very distant region, which tradition places in the Caucasus or a similar location at the world's edge. Hephaestus, while nailing, chaining, and securing the irons, expresses compassion. Kratos, on the other hand, insists on humiliating Prometheus, reminding him that he stole the prerogatives of the gods for mortals and that he must now pay the price for his hubris. The torment is conceived as eternal. Kratos announces that there will be no relief, that no sleep, no moment will free him from the torment, and that a fierce bird will come every day to devour his liver. Prometheus speaks little in this scene. His voice will be heard more after the divine executioners have departed.
Prometheus's Lament and the Arrival of the Chorus. Once alone, Prometheus begins his long lament. He invokes the sky and the earth, the rivers, the sea, the sun's disk, the primordial forces that witnessed the birth and transformation of the cosmos. He laments his fate, the violence with which Zeus has punished him, emphasizing the contrast between his own benevolence towards mortals and the harshness of the divine sovereign. At this point, the chorus enters the scene, formed by the Oceanids, daughters of the god Oceanus, young marine deities, gentle and compassionate, who arrive on a winged chariot, driven by curiosity and the desire to console Prometheus. The chorus listens to the Titan's tale,
asks questions, is astonished, and often shows pity, but also fear of opposing Zeus's order. Prometheus, in dialogue with the chorus, begins to recount his gesture in favor of mortals. He recalls how they were originally devoid of knowledge, like children, incapable of foreseeing, distinguishing, or calculating. He boasts of having saved them from total destruction, of having prevented Zeus from annihilating them and creating a new race. Alongside the theft of fire, Prometheus recalls having given men numerous techniques and arts: calculation, writing, the ability to build houses, work wood, navigate, extract metals from the earth, predict from the signs of the sky, and even medicine. In the tragedy, therefore, the theft of fire is placed within a broader framework of civilization. It is no longer just a single gift, but the first step in a series of concessions through which Prometheus humanizes man, pulling him out of an almost bestial condition. Oceanus and the recommended prudence. After the chorus, Oceanus, father of the Oceanids, arrives on the scene. He is an ancient titan, a figure of cosmic stability, who tries to persuade Prometheus to submit to Zeus. Oceanus offers to intercede with the supreme god, but Prometheus, proud and defiant, rejects the offer, considering it useless and dangerous. He sees Oceanus's prudence as a form of servility. The Catalogue of Promethean Gifts. In Aeschylus's tragedy, the list of gifts given by Prometheus to men is much more extensive and detailed than in Hesiod, emphasizing the Titan's role as the founder of human civilization. Prometheus claims to have taught men architecture and construction, the ability to build houses and shelters, escaping the caves; astronomy and calculation, the observation of the stars, the calculation of time, and the understanding of seasons; writing and memory, the invention of letters and the art of memory; taming of animals, the use of oxen for plowing and horses for transport; navigation, the construction of ships and the art of sailing; medicine, the ability to cure diseases, use herbs and remedies, practice primitive surgery, and read the signs of the body; divination, the ability to interpret dreams, signs, and omens. All this is presented as a great work of civilization. Prometheus claims to have prevented the total destruction of the human race by Zeus, suggesting that the sovereign of the gods wanted to wipe out mortals, but was restrained by the Titan's intervention. The conflict with Zeus and the secret of the future. Aeschylus. The arrival of Io and the prophecy of her destiny. In the middle of the drama, Io arrives, a maiden transformed into a heifer by Zeus, persecuted by a gadfly sent by the jealous Hera. Her presence introduces another drama of persecution by Zeus, but this time of an amorous nature. Io recounts her wanderings, the madness that drives her to roam the world. Prometheus, thanks to his prophetic ability, explains the long journey that still awaits her, describing distant lands, foreign peoples, sufferings, and finally the promise of a lineage that will culminate in a great hero. Prometheus announces that from Io, after many generations, Heracles will be born, the hero who will one day free him from his chains. Thus, the drama intertwines his own future salvation with the destiny of the persecuted maiden. The thread of suffering runs through generations, but leads to an act of liberation that Zeus himself, in a future reconciliation, will permit.
The secret of Zeus's future downfall. A central element of the drama is the secret that Prometheus possesses. He knows something that can threaten Zeus's reign. Prometheus alludes several times to the fact that Zeus risks falling if he unites with a certain woman, destined to generate a son more powerful than his father. Aeschylus does not explicitly identify the woman's name in the surviving text, but what matters is that Prometheus knows this destiny and refuses to reveal it unless Zeus softens his harshness. This knowledge makes Prometheus not only a benefactor of men, but also a figure who holds potential power even over Zeus. The sovereign of the gods, knowing that Prometheus possesses this secret, has an interest in keeping him alive and, in a sense, will need him in the future. This creates a dramatic tension between the current punishment and a possible future negotiation.
Sending of Hermes and Prometheus's refusal. Towards the end of the tragedy, Zeus sends the god Hermes to confront Prometheus. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, brings Zeus's order. Prometheus must reveal the secret. He must say who the woman destined to generate the son who could threaten the sovereign's dominion is. Hermes speaks with an arrogant and authoritarian tone, mocking the Titan's pride and ordering him to yield. Prometheus, however, refuses. He remains unyielding, declaring that he will not speak, that he prefers to endure any pain rather than surrender to threats and betray his position. Aeschylus puts lofty words into the Titan's mouth here, in which Prometheus affirms his choice to resist. This refusal leads Hermes to announce an intensification of the punishment. The earth itself will tremble, and Prometheus will be plunged into deeper abysses, from which he will later be brought back to light to continue suffering the eagle's torment. The tragedy closes with a great scenic upheaval, thunder, earthquakes, and lightning enveloping the rock to which Prometheus is chained. The Titan, though overwhelmed, does not renounce his choice. The drama, in the form that has reached us, ends without showing the final liberation by Heracles, but this is known from the overall mythical tradition.
Hesiodic mention and tradition of liberation by Heracles. Although Prometheus Bound does not show the scene of liberation, the mythical tradition, already suggested in Hesiod, recounts that one day Heracles, son of Zeus, during one of his labors, will arrive at the place of Prometheus's torment. There he will shoot an arrow at the eagle that devoured the Titan's liver every day, killing it. He will then break Prometheus's chains, restoring his freedom, but on the condition that the Titan forever wears an iron ring with a fragment of rock, a symbolic sign of the penalty never entirely erased. Hesiod only alludes to the future liberation, suggesting that Zeus himself, with the passage of time, will change his attitude and permit this solution, perhaps following the usefulness that Prometheus's knowledge can have for the sovereign of the gods.
The main narrative differences between Hesiod and Aeschylus. Focus. Hesiod, theogony, works and days, the institution of sacrifice, the theft of fire, and the human condition, encompassing evils, Pandora, and toil. Aeschylus, Prometheus Bound, the individual suffering of Prometheus, his voice, the moral and political conflict with Zeus, and his role as a global civilizer. Prometheus's role. Hesiod, a cunning deceiver whose actions provoke Zeus's wrath, resulting in a worsened condition for mankind, albeit enriched by fire. Aeschylus, primarily a heroic benefactor and an ally of men, approaching the status of a martyr who suffers for having bestowed upon them the gifts of civilization. Portrayal of Zeus. Hesiod, depicted as a just yet severe sovereign who defends his established order and punishes deception. Aeschylus, characterized as a young, harsh, and ruthless tyrant who exercises power through violence, thereby arousing the compassion of other deities. Oracular future dimension. Hesiod alludes to Prometheus's future liberation by Heracles without elaborating on the significance of the oracular secret. Aeschylus constructs dramatic tension around Prometheus's secret, Zeus's potential downfall, positioning the Titan as the possessor of knowledge essential for cosmic stability. Narrative structure. Hesiod presents the myth in the form of an epic didactic tale, lacking extended dialogues. Aeschylus develops the myth as a dialogue-based tragedy, enriched with monologues, sticomythia, choral lyricism, and plot twists.
The mythological narrative, Prometheus according to Orphic and post-classical versions. The Orphic version, Prometheus as bearer of the divine spark. In the fragments attributed to the Orphic tradition, the myth of Prometheus takes on a deeper cosmological and theogonic coloring compared to Hesiod and Aeschylus. The Orphic Prometheus is not just a cunning and civilizing titan, but an intermediary principle between the divine and human spheres. According to some fragments contained in the commentary on Plato via Proclus, and referring to the Orphic theogonic cycle, Prometheus is associated with the fabrication of man, or the gift of the animating spark that makes man capable of participating in the divine. In some later Orphic versions, reported by Damascus and other Neoplatonist interpreters, Prometheus appears alongside Dionysus and his Titans. After the Titans dismembered the young Dionysus Zagreus, Zeus strikes them with lightning, and from the ashes of the Titans and the divine parts of Dionysus, man is born. In this conception, known as the myth of Orphic anthropogenesis, Prometheus represents the one who receives or transmits the vital fire that unites the divine component, Dionysian, with the titanic one. The fire is no longer just the material fire stolen from Hephaestus or Zeus, but the fire of intelligence and life. Prometheus is thus interpreted as a minor demiurge who participates in human creation by introducing a divine spark, the pneuma, into the body, and who is punished or bound in matter for this act, just as the soul, descending into the body, becomes a prisoner. In Orphic and late Platonist readings, his torment becomes a symbol of the human soul's condition, incarcerated in the flesh. The eagle devouring the liver represents the passionate nature that continually consumes the immortal part of man.
Plato, the philosophical version in the Protagoras. In the dialogue Protagoras, 320d to 323a, Plato presents a reworked and philosophically refined version of the Promethean myth, functional to his reflection on the origin of civilization and political virtue. Plato's account is not formulated in a religious or theogonic tone, but in the form of a rational myth that explains how men received the necessary capacities to live together and found cities. He narrates that after the creation of living beings by the gods, Epimetheus is tasked with distributing gifts, strengths, speed, weapons, wings, armor among the creatures. However, he acts hastily and disorderly. He gives too much to certain species, too little to others, ending up exhausting all resources before reaching man. When Prometheus arrives to inspect the distribution, he discovers that man is naked, barefoot, and defenseless. To remedy his brother's mistake, Prometheus ascends to the workshop of Hephaestus and Athena, where the gods work with fire, arts, and technical sciences, and steals fire and techne in inseparable union to give them to man. Plato writes that it was not possible to introduce Sophia Basilike, the political wisdom that belongs to Zeus, into men, but only technical skill, techne,
technical skill. Thus, humanity received the ability to build houses, dress, procure food, and create tools, but not yet the ability to live in social harmony. Zeus, seeing that men fight among themselves and live scattered, sends Hermes to earth to bring eidos, shame, modesty, and dike, justice, moral elements that allow for communal life. Everyone must participate in these, says Zeus, and not like the other arts, reserved for a few, because without shame and justice, cities could not exist. In the Platonic account, therefore, Prometheus is neither punished nor chained, but becomes the intellectual mediator who bestows the arts. Zeus remains the founder of political virtue, and the myth serves to distinguish between techne and arete, one granted by Prometheus, the other distributed by Zeus.
Apollodorus, late classical mythographic synthesis. In Apollodorus' Bibliotheca 1:7-1-2, a mythographic text from the Hellenistic period, but with a long tradition, the story of Prometheus is systematically presented in a compact and authoritative form as a coherent part of the Titanic genealogy and the history of the first gods. Apollodorus narrates that Prometheus, son of Iapetus and Clymene, stole fire from Zeus, hidden in a narthex, to give it to men. For this, Zeus ordered him to be chained to Mount Caucasus, where an eagle devoured his liver every day. After many generations, Heracles, traveling eastward during his labors, killed the eagle and freed him with Zeus's consent. Apollodorus adds the detail of the chain mark that Prometheus had to wear as a memorial of the fault. In passing, Apollodorus mentions the episode of Deucalion, son of Prometheus, who builds an ark to survive the flood sent by Zeus to punish men, a lineage that connects Prometheus to the regeneration of humanity itself.
Other post-classical testimonies. Pindar and the theme of punished intelligence. In some Pindaric fragments, Prometheus is mentioned as a symbol of rebellious intelligence and as a figure of one who foresees more than he should. The theme of hubris is central, the excess of knowledge that leads to transgression.
Sophocles and the Reconciliation. Sophocles wrote a trilogy about Prometheus, of which only fragments remain. Ancient testimonies suggest that the trilogy might have included a Prometheus Unbound, in which the Titan, reconciled with Zeus, reveals the secret of the dangerous marriage. In this tradition, Prometheus becomes an example of cosmic reconciliation, the one who, after challenging the sovereign, contributes to the stability of the universal order.
Lucretius and the Rational Prometheus. In Book 5 of De Rerum Natura, Lucretius reinterprets the myth of Prometheus in a naturalistic and materialistic key. It no longer appears as a tale of gods and punishments, but as a metaphor for human ingenuity discovering fire. Prometheus becomes the symbol of technical progress. Man, master of nature through reason and fire, not by divine gift, but by his own evolution. The eagle and chains are allegories of the toil and consequences of knowledge. Hyginus and Prometheus Plasmator Hominis. In Hyginus's Fabulae, a Latin author from the Augustan era, there is a version where Prometheus molds man from clay and Athena infuses the breath of life into him. This version, probably derived from Orphic and Platonic sources, revives the demiurgic theme. Prometheus is a kind of modeler, similar to Hephaestus, who creates the human species with his hands. The theft of fire follows this creation as a gesture of completion to animate man and give him the warmth of existence. Synthesis of Orphic and post-classical variants. Orphic tradition. Prometheus's role: demiurge and transmitter of the divine spark. Type of fire or gift: spiritual and vital fire. Nature of the fault: transgression of the cosmic order. Consequence or punishment, imprisonment as a symbol of the incarnated soul. Platonic tradition, Protagoras. Prometheus's role, technical intellectual mediator. Type of fire or gift, fire and the technical arts. Nature of the fault, not a fault, but a pedagogical act. Consequence or punishment, no punishment. Zeus completes the work with Eidos and Dike. Apollodorus, mythography. Prometheus's role, rebellious civilizer. Type of fire or gift, material fire. Nature of the fault, theft from the gods. Consequence or punishment, chaining on the Caucasus followed by liberation by Heracles. Hyginus, late Latin. Prometheus's role, creator of man. Type of fire or gift, vital and creative fire. Nature of the fault, creative transgression. Consequence or punishment, a punishment similar to the canonical one. Lucretius, rational. Prometheus's role, symbol of human reason. Type of fire or gift, fire as knowledge. Nature of the fault, no divinity involved. Consequence or punishment, no punishment but toil and progress. Pindar, Sophocles. Prometheus's role, a wise figure later reconciled. Type of fire or gift, prophetic wisdom. Nature of the fault, an excess of intelligence. Consequence or punishment, reconciliation or integration into the new divine order. In-depth academic analysis. This section uses exclusively academic secondary sources, monographs, peer-reviewed articles, university theses, and works present in the corpus to construct the in-depth academic analysis of the Prometheus myth. Academic analysis of the myth Prometheus. Origins and historical religious context. The myth of Prometheus arises during a period of transition from the archaic theogonic world to the religious anthropology of archaic Greece. Scholars, for example, Jean-Pierre Vernant, Walter Burkert, Marcel Detienne, show that the figure of Prometheus coincides with the shift from a religion of cosmic force to a thought of productive intelligence. Prometheus is a titan, but not comparable to the other rebels of the Titanomachy. Hesiod places him at the ritual moment of Mecone, which is foundational for sacrifice. According to Vernant's structuralist reading, the scene establishes an order of separation between gods and men. The meat belongs to mortals, the smoke and bones to the immortals. Prometheus is the mediator who symbolically breaks this boundary. His cunning, Metis, inaugurates the cultural distance that henceforth defines man. In comparative terms, some scholars, such as Nielsen and West, see analogies with Indo-European and Near Eastern traditions. Figures who steal fire or bring light, for example, the Indian myth of Maharishvan or the Iranian Ahura Mazda against Angra Mainyu. However, in the Greek context, the gift of fire is not merely a physical act. It becomes a cultural codification of technical knowledge, rooted in the term techne itself. Symbolic analysis. The fire. According to Detienne, Le Jardins of Adonis, 1972, fire represents the frontier between nature and culture. In the Promethean act, it becomes an instrument of techne, the ability to model, cook, or forge. Humanity enters the domain of the logos technikon, and Prometheus is the archetype of the divine artisan, comparable to Hephaestus, but endowed with deceptive intelligence. Burkert interprets the episode not as simple theft, but as the ritual introduction of controlled knowledge. Zeus's prohibition symbolizes the cosmic order that fears the disorder of intelligence. The Titan's punishment represents the price of autonomy, creative energy condemned for its subversive potential. The chain and the eagle. The image of the bond evokes in Journée, Anthropology of Ancient Greece, the transition from savage power to controlled power. The Caucasian mountain becomes the liminal space of imprisoned knowledge. The eagle, Zeus's royal bird, is read by Carini as a psychodrama of spiritual energy. It devours the liver, the seat of emotions and desires, regenerating it continuously in an endless cycle, a metaphor for the cyclical physis that renews matter but does not extinguish pain. Pandora and the balance of gifts. In the Prometheus-Pandora binomial, Hesiod constructs the balance of cosmic do ut des. The male theft of fire corresponds to the female deceptive gift of beauty. Jean Rudhart shows that Zeus reestablishes order through charis, a gift that binds and constrains. Pandora is the anthropological translation of divine seduction. Man receives culture and pain together. Structural and comparative analysis. Prometheus as a trickster. Claude Lévi-Strauss sees in Prometheus a Mediterranean form of the trickster archetype, one who operates at the thresholds of the cosmos, parallel to Coyote and Loki in mythical function, mediating the conflict between order and chaos. The binary structure of fire, sacrifice corresponds to that of civilization and instinct. Contrasts with Eastern myths, Martin West, The East Face of Helicon, notes the analogy with the Sumerian myth of Enki, who steals the me of the divine order to give them to men. But, unlike Enki, Prometheus is not a benevolent deity. Aeschylus transforms him into a tragic rebel, internal to a moral system where divine power is subject to ethical dialectics. Christological dimension in later reception. Studies by Dodds and Karenni have shown that, in the Hellenistic age and later in the Christian era, Prometheus becomes a figure of a proto-Christ, a bearer of light, condemned, a liberator through suffering. But this reading belongs to reception and not to the origin. In archaic Greece, there is no redemption, only balance found in Zeus's decay. Social and psychological function. According to Gilbert Durand's psychological reading, Les structures anthropologiques de l'imaginaire, the myth of Prometheus represents an archetypal projection of the creative act. Fire symbolizes the consciousness that separates itself from instinct. Jung identifies Prometheus as the symbol of the Western Promethean ego, associated with progress and technological hybris. Modern man is his heir in perpetual tension between emancipation and punishment. On the social level, Vernant observes that the myth justifies the necessity of toil, ponos. In The Works and Days, Hesiod links the theft of fire to the birth of labor. After Pandora, man works to survive. Prometheus thus becomes the ethical foundation of the archaic economy, where production, transformation of nature, stems from an original fault. The divine penalty contains the social obligation of measure. Reception and cultural legacy. Antiquity and humanism. Already with Plato in the Protagoras, Prometheus becomes the foundation of the philosophy of education. Man is born incomplete and receives techne from Prometheus, while Zeus bestows political arete. In the Renaissance, Prometheus is reinterpreted as a symbol of creative ingenuity, Marsilio Ficino, Theologia Platonica. Humanistic art celebrates the Titan as the first artist, while alchemy identifies him with the principle of spiritual fire, ignis philosophorum. Modern Age and Romanticism. In reception studies, Prometheus takes on a titanic and political value. Goethe dedicates the ode Prometheus, 1774, to him, where rebellion becomes individual consciousness. Shelley, with Prometheus Unbound, 1820, transforms the punishment into the moral liberation of humanity. Harold Bloom's studies, Shelley's myth-making, show that the romantic Prometheus is the image of the poet god, an autonomous creator who replaces Zeus as the source of meaning. Contemporaneity. In the 20th century, Hannah Arendt in The Human Condition sees in Prometheus the paradigm of technology as liberation and danger. Jacques Ellul in La Technique ou l'enjeu du siècle considers him the ambiguous patron of modernity. In the Anthropology of Myth, Hesiod, 18, he becomes the archetype of the man who creates time. In cinema and the arts, Prometheus continues his metamorphosis. From Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, to Ridley Scott's films, the myth shapes the dialectic between creation and destruction, intelligence and hubris. Interpretive synthesis. The totality of sources and academic readings agrees on one point. Prometheus is not only the one who steals, but the one who institutes culture. His fault and his gift coincide. In archaic Greece, knowledge is a necessary transgression. The Promethean man is the being who lives in the interval between dike and metis, order and cunning, ethics and technique. As Vernant concludes, the myth does not teach rebellion, but to understand that intelligence is a power that both destroys and saves.
I know, everyone asks you to do this, but there's a reason why. Hitting like and subscribing costs you absolutely nothing, but it's a huge help for me. Remember, subscribing is completely free, and you can subscribe to as many channels as you like. Thank you. See you soon.